like to get started. My name is Carolyn Hatch, and I'm a postdoc fellow at the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development at Michigan State University. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, Expediting the Commercialization of Bio-Based Products via OBIC's Cell-to-Cell Innovation Model. And I just wanted to reiterate to those who have just recently joined us, I've put a couple of polls up there on the screen. We're really interested in knowing a little bit more about you, how you heard about the webinar, as well as what sector, what industry you're representing. We're very fortunate to have Dennis Hall from Ohio State University as our presenter today. As many of you know, Ohio State has been a real pioneer in commercialization efforts for bio-based products. This presentation is a part of our Innovations in Agriculture and Rural Development webinar series here at the Center. And the goal of this series is to connect the innovative ideas and the research and the technology, and in this case, the practice of land-grant universities in the North Central region with stakeholders in rural areas. So before I introduce our speaker, I just wanted to take a minute to point out a couple of administrative items. And the first is that Denny is going to speak for about 20 or 25 minutes. And we're going to leave the questions and the answers to the end of his talk. And as well, he's interested in getting your feedback on specific questions throughout the presentation. So please keep your eyes peeled for polls that are going to accompany several slides. And finally, if you have any questions for our speaker, please put them directly into the chat box. So I'd like to now introduce our speaker. We're really pleased to host and welcome Mr. Dennis Hall, who is the Director of the Ohio Bioproduct Innovation Center at The Ohio State University. Denny has been with OBIC since its founding and its creation in 2005. And he's assisted over 60 OBIC collaborators and partners in securing over $100 million in supplemental funding in order to accelerate and facilitate research and commercialization activities. So today, Denny's going to talk about OBIC's unique cluster development strategy that brings together stakeholder actors from across the bio-based supply chain. So Denny, a warm welcome to you. Thanks for being with us today, and I'd like to turn it over to you now.
Okay, well, thank you, Carolyn. Wait here until we see a slide pop up. There we go. All right, well, hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time and being interested in this subject today. I hope that I can make your one hour here with us, or 20 minutes of where I'm going to be visiting, a productive session for you. Just to kind of lay out what I'm going to try to accomplish for you, it really divides out into three different categories. I need to tell you a little bit about Ohio because it establishes a context from which our bioproduct commercialization program was born. Also, I'm going to tell you a little bit, we'll talk a little bit about bioproducts, what are bio-based products, and what kind of role do they play in our society. And then we'll also talk a little bit about OBIC and what our Bioproduct Innovation Center, some of the kinds of things that we do here at OBIC. And so the first, a little bit about Ohio and kind of why OBIC came to be. It's mainly because we are both a big agricultural state and a big, let's see, so when you put that poll right there, you covered up where I can change the slides. So maybe I go full screen, maybe. No, that didn't help. Yeah, okay.
Sorry about that, Denny. I just shifted it over.
Yeah, okay, that's great, thanks. So Ohio happens to be #1 not only in polymers overall, but also in #1 in paints and coatings, #1 in adhesives, #1 in rubber, #1 in soaps and detergents, and depending on what metric you use, we're also either number 2 or number 4 in plastics. So these are big polymer areas. And the question today is, Joanne, I'm seeing, is my sound quality okay? If you would just text that, that would be great. Or Carolyn, if you think I'm okay? Okay, good. Thank you. So Joanne's one of our members of our network. That's nice to see her here with us. Ohio's big, polymer state, and we can see from the response to the polls that, the polymer industry, whether you're manufacturing polymers or you're using them for in other manufacturing opportunities, is an important part of most communities across the north central region. And so OBIC was created then to link these two centers, or these two big industries. Agriculture, in the case of Ohio at the time, was about $100 billion industry, with this polymer and specialty chemicals industry, which also is about $89 billion. So these two very large industries that we brought together. And so when we talk about bio-based products, we reference these three different sets of types of material. So clearly, or drivers, clearly feedstocks, what kind of bio-based feedstocks are in your community? That's what our kind of poll is looking for. What are some of the various technologies that are available to convert those feedstocks into things that then satisfy markets? And we're not naive to think that we don't also produce food with these bio-based feedstocks. And so clearly those types of food products almost always will trump anything else because of just the value of those materials. But in addition, there's fuels and energy. But what OBIC focuses on, and what our Bioproduct Innovation Center heavily leans on, is in the material space. So I can see here that the majority of you have the field crops, the corn, the soybeans, maybe wheat. In the south, it might be some other types of plants, but also we have some forest products. Livestock waste is an area. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about one of our really cool projects in terms of municipal solid waste. And I actually meant this, it says coal waste, but we were thinking more along the way of food processing waste is kind of the category that we're leaning towards there. So, all right. So again, bio-based materials is kind of the focus of where we're going. Now, what does OBIC do? What do we try to accomplish? What's our brand promise, if you will? And that is to knowing that there's a lot of great companies and a lot of important work going on out there in the industry and at universities and in government labs, etc., and knowing that there's some good stuff, what can we do to kind of expedite it? How can we change the slope? How can we make these bioproducts commercialized quicker or more valuable? And so we have what we call our cell-to-cell innovation pipeline. And, that's said another way is just kind of working to bring all these different stakeholders together to build these supply chains. And so, like everyone from the agricultural producer and really the people that provide the inputs to the producer, all the way through the chain to ultimately to a product that's manufactured and sold, and then even increasingly looking at end of life of that product and how is it either recycled or reused or repurposed. So that's our cell-to-cell innovation pipeline. CELL obviously indicating biological, SELL obviously meaning market. And so we articulate ourselves as a cluster development agent, that what we try to do is help link people up and to form these clusters. And there's a whole set of activities. This doesn't just automatically happen. It does take effort, it does take work, and some of the types of things that are involved would be prospecting, networking, assessment, leveraging resources and talent, and program oversight. And we think that it's important that our communities be mindful of that there's both a common good, sort of like a public benefit to this kind of activity, but then there's also these more private sector, or maybe if you've gotten a federal grant or a state grant or a community grant, you've got the expectations of delivering on that project, and so you've got this kind of private sector focus. And so the balance of these two things is really what's important to kind of facilitate these kinds of cluster development. And so, if you think about it over time, when you first are starting, the public sector role may be a little higher in terms of getting, funding some work to kind of identify who are the stakeholders that should be a part of this, what's the right kind of output that we should be creating, what are the right kinds of technologies that we need to be bringing together. And then as you grow this, you bring in more stakeholders, and to the point where you actually have well-defined supply chains and markets, and the private sector becomes much more important, and the public sector role is much less. So that's an important part of kind of who we are. Now in 2012, this graphic is sort of a snapshot of our clusters back in say December of 2012. And I'm not going to go into the detail of all of these, all the different companies that are involved here, or even going into very much detail with the actual clusters. But it's important to see that, like the squares here, this square just happens to be Ohio State University. But I want you to note that there's lots of squares. We've never been only working with Ohio State University. And I know that for a fact, Michigan State University, Purdue, Oregon State University, other universities in Ohio have been a part of our program. The center here is Cornell. We've worked with them on a bioenergy and bioproducts education program, and so other universities associated with that. So just to kind of sense of sort of the number of companies that we've interacted with, how we facilitate that, and sort of like a little bit more on the way in which we've worked with them. So Carolyn indicated in my introduction that to date we've generated over $100 million of direct grant funding to drive these kinds of projects, and many of them were really helped to kind of pull all of these different kinds of actors together. And while I know that this value is much greater when we roll it up out in the communities and the industry, but this $193 million is what we are actually able to track at Ohio State University in terms of like match and other participants, other elements associated with this grant. And to date, again, I can't look into Michigan State University or Purdue or other universities' fiscal records, but we know that at Ohio State University, over 200 employees, and I think it's like 76 faculty members, have received a portion of their funding from OBIC. We routinely at OBIC employ in the neighborhood of 20 students per year to kind of engage them and involve them in our program. And so what have we learned from our first launch of this Ohio Bioproducts Innovation Center, with this first set of grants that we've done? And the very important thing is that industry is the best group to lead these kind of commercialization efforts. We can play a role in facilitating and supporting, but you really want the industry to be the one. They're the ones that's making the investment and driving these projects, and we want to be able to support them, but they need to lead it. The research community can provide new intellectual property, but where we've found our researchers here to be most helpful is working with some of these startup companies and these businesses with identifying and overcoming the hurdles that these businesses will no doubt encounter, typically technical in nature, but sometimes commercial in nature. Our research community can be very helpful in that regard. And then also, it's just important to reference the fact that policy plays a role here as well, and in many cases can be very important in lessening the risk and helping to accelerate this commercialization process. So, the recent passing of the Farm Bill lays out some really new opportunities, both with the Biopreferred program and with the energy title, that we can really now begin to even see greater growth in this industry. And then, through our work, we've discovered that, we can play an important role in this process. So in November of 2013, we actually launched what we call OBIC 2.0. We kind of feel like we've grown up from what was that original Ohio Right Center of Innovation, and we actually have changed our name now to OBIC. And so part of that was we were at a crossroads. Are we an Ohio economic development organization, or are we a bioproduct industry organization? And we chose to opt for a more national stance, actually international in scope, and focused on bio-based products. And so in the process, we're still at the Ohio State University, but we tend to refer to ourselves as OBIC as opposed to the Ohio Bioproduct Innovation Center. So these are all the different kinds of stakeholders that we work with, agriculture, chemical manufacturers, polymers, products, researchers, government, education organizations. And we know that it's just a small sliver of what all of these folks do that's regarding bio-based products. But that's all of what we do. And so that's our singular focus, is bioproduct commercialization. And then we have these different mission themes or targeted focus areas, program thrusts, where I'll show this in a little bit later in terms of, you'll see it as a star, where we talk about clusters and biomass supply and our education outreach efforts and strategic relationships and our bioproduct network. But first, I want to again say that, so we take all of these different stakeholders and we help them get lined up in a row, take and get your ducks in a row, so to speak, and kind of help to create these types of products. So we've also been spending quite a bit of time thinking about why bio-based. Why do people care about bio-based? And so, we've contracted with a marketing firm to really help us kind of articulate this bio-based promise. That bio-based innovations offer consumers intelligent, sustainable choices because they use renewable materials derived from plants. And so I see that we've got a poll up, and the question there is, why should consumers use bio-based? Is it because they utilize domestic feedstocks? Is it because it's environmentally superior, more sustainable? Is it because of cost and performance benefits? I mean, clearly that's what industry is going to be doing. Or is it because it creates new jobs and creates economic development, adds value to our community? So in this case, you can select more than one, but I'm glad to see that at least at this point with this audience, no one's saying that we should not use bio-based materials. That's good to know. All right. So our next slide then talks about these program thrusts, and this is kind of what OBIC does and what our program actually drives. And so I mentioned these 5 themes, and then I've got this piece in the middle that I want to talk about next. So for whatever reason, bio-based products are not really known by consumers. People don't really know about bio-based detergents or bio-based paints or bio-based lubricants or bio-based plastics. Maybe they've seen some bio-based packaging and might see some values associated with that. But for the most part, people are unaware of bio-based products. And so we've made a major commitment to host a conference here in Ohio on October 5th through 8th to really shine a very bright light on bio-based products. And so I typically refer to it as our showcase. And so we had a little error here, so I need to kind of refer to this slide first, and I'll go back. So this kind of gives you a sense of our business plan relative to this conference. First and foremost, About 70% of my time right now is targeting what I refer to as magnet procurement officials and buyers. And so let me go back here. Who are we talking about with that? Well, the federal government has a bio-based preferred procurement requirement, and so they are automatically stakeholders. Many of our states in the North Central region have similar types of policies. There are many green counties that want to be utilizing bio-based or more sustainable solutions, and so working with the National Association of Counties. And then many of our K-12 or our universities also want to be a part of this this industry. And so helping them to see what some of these products are. But then also there's the whole private sector, home improvement stores, office supply stores, grocery chains, specialty retails, places like Amazon.com, and even farm supply places would be groups that could utilize some of these types of products. And what are these types of products? Again, cleaners, packaging, landscaping materials, personal care, construction, home and business construction, industrial supply, food service, or particularly a lot of their packaging, office supply, etc. So if we get these major procurement people to be in attendance at this conference, and we're getting great response at this point, then the bio-based product manufacturers who have these products to sell will likewise want to exhibit. And if we have them there exhibiting, then people who are producing bio-based materials also will want to be involved so as to help showcase their materials that could even increase greater bio-based content. And then, if we've got them here and we know that there's this market, even our conventional product manufacturers will want to be in attendance so that they can identify these types of bio-based materials and utilize them in their procurement strategies or in their manufacturing strategies. So that real quickly is a little bit about our major conference that we have planned for October 5th through 8th in 2014 here in Columbus. So another program thrust for us is our clusters, the idea of building these clusters. And so I mentioned that this was a snapshot of 2012. We are creating a new cluster strategy that also goes along with our OBIC 2.0 vision. I mentioned that the shift from becoming a bioproduct industry leader or bioproduct industry organization, a big part of that is the engagement of and the new role for our industry collaborators to participate. So I'm not going to go into detail about these different models that we have utilized or are developing, but here's a situation where you've got, say, 8 different stakeholders that all are interested in, say, let's just use an example, bio-based packaging. And so they agree to share in a cluster, and for 1/8 of the cost, they get a significant value. In many cases, you get this might fit very nicely with an IUCRC, and I'm aware of some centers like this that are in place, and maybe we even have someone from Iowa State University on the call that on the webinar that is involved in something like that. The other thing is, maybe you have like a company that says, okay, I want a cluster, I need some help, I will be willing to provide sort of like the seed funding. Can you get sort of like the rest of the supply chain members that also benefit and participate with us in helping develop the supply chain? And so those are 2 common examples of ways. And then typically grants may be used, and you can bring together stakeholders to match a federal or a state grant. So I'm not going to go into detail for some of these others. I'll speak to this a little bit later when I'm talking about municipal solid waste. One part of our program is what we call the OBIC Bioproduct Network, and we now have a board of advisors. And so what does that look like? Well, these are the current members of our bioproduct network. We now have 47 members. Membership for a full-blown commercial firm is $5,000 per year. For the startups or companies that are pre-commercial, the membership is only $1,000, so it's not that cost prohibitive. but it does help to facilitate this really nice, what we call bioproducts ecosystem. We lay it out in what looks like a shopping mall because we think there is value in being virtually co-located and able to work together. And there's some really big brand names in here: Goodyear, Nike, PepsiCo, Sherwin-Williams, maybe you know Ashland. They produce a product called Enverez that is used when you see a John Deere combine. The green composite that you see when you see that combine is actually a bio-based product produced by Enverez. Poly-One is one of the largest producers of plastic resins and materials. Emery Oleochemicals, a big producer of tallow-based chemicals out of Cincinnati. Scott's Miracle-Gro, Johnsonite Tarkett, a major leader in the flooring industry. So some examples of some of the companies that are, or organizations that are a part. Should probably mention the Ohio Soybean Council and the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers. Probably OBIC would not have existed had it not been for really the leadership of the Ohio Soybean Council way back in the early 2000s in creating sort of this soy-based, bio-based products. Here's our board of advisors. Again, some of these names that you may know: the Andersons, Ashland, BioBend is a startup. They represent sort of like the entrepreneurial community on our board. Soybean Council, Emery, Poly-One, Scott's Miracle-Gro, Sherwin-Williams, Team Gemini. I'll speak a little bit with that, and Kate Lewis from the USDA BioPreferred program. So we have 12 board members and very much appreciate them. I should mention Bruce McFerrin, who's the dean of the college here at OSU as well. So what's our value proposition? Why do people want to be members of our network? Access to early stage opportunities, the technical and market information that we can bring to bear, these cross-organizational linkages, that network. We have some terrific proposal development expertise and can help to leverage their investment and resources, working with the USDA BioPreferred program and helping people get the that federal preferred procurement label or just the certification. Grassroots educational marketing program or grassroots educational programs, and then some stuff we're doing with brand marketing. So then, when we visit with companies, we always start off with what we refer to as Discover, and that's just a session where we learn about the company. We try to determine if there's a good strategic fit between the kinds of things that OBIC offers and the kinds of needs that company requires. And then if there is a good fit, we offer this membership into our network or the connect function. And then there are different types of services that we offer that go above and beyond just that membership function, maybe life cycle analysis or techno-economic analysis or market studies. Assist is typically assisting with grant writing or securing supplemental funds. And when we do get some of these very large projects that have multiple stakeholders involved, there's typically a stewardship function that we provide as a part of that program. Okay, I'm going to race through biomass, biorefining. These are all the typical types of products that we've got, or the feedstocks that are out there. Very interesting technology, what we call the UDR technology. And we have a massive, a very large $400 million program in municipal solid waste that we're excited about. We're converting what it looks like garbage into through this WLE separation system to these types of metals and getting that kind of non-bio-based material away from this organic slurry and to produce like a compost but also energy. And then associated with this program is lots of greenhouses and aquaculture and lettuces, etc. So some algae work. Yeah, okay, I've got control now again for some reason. Okay. Well, let me say that last year we did a national market study because we were just trying to get some sort of baseline data about people's knowledge or awareness of bio-based products. And by any measure, it was a complete failure on the part of the public's awareness of. We kind of knew that was going to be the case. People don't know what bio-based products are. And so but at this point, we now quantified it. And so We did both a national study where there were 400 respondents, a national study of 200 respondents that were identified as eco-friendly, and then 200 and just that was specific to the state of Ohio to kind of maybe see what we could do to move the meter without having to do it nationally. We have a very large educational program, a big program now called Welcome to Our Biorefinery. Just some pictures here. You see our team at the Ohio State Fair, and this photo was taken at the National FFA Convention where we were burning off a little bit of biogas, and I don't think Dustin anticipated that flame to shoot up quite that high, but it added some element of interest to our presentation. We have this educational program where we're training teachers, and this is again led by Cornell University. And today you can see the numbers of teachers that we've trained. We're very excited about the plan for 2014, where we will be August 4th through 8th training teachers in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're partnering in 2014 with Purdue and Michigan State University to do that. But if you're interested in maybe having some teachers trained in this kind of area, this is typically, I would say, middle school, sort of the grades 6 through 12 is the largest portion of the program. The content is really great because you link sort of agriculture science and biology and chemistry and environmental sciences along with like engineering and other kinds of STEM types of disciplines. So it's very engaging for students. People really seem to enjoy working that area, and seeing your interest here in these types of categories. I appreciate that many of you might be interested in partnering with us and kind of helping to get some of these educational materials out. So thank you for that. We also are in the process, we pick up a new van on Monday. We have a local Ford dealership, Pilata Ford in Worcester, Ohio, that's donated the use of a Ford van for us. And so we've been playing around with some of the, how we might dress that up. I had a meeting just this morning, and we've actually opted for this particular type of design, and it's going to be reference to the OBIC Sustainable World Tour. Discover how bio-based resources are renewable, innovative, and intelligent. And so this is kind of, we've got some additional work to do on this design, but very excited about what we're going to be able to do with taking this kind of vehicle and our whole execution strategy around getting the word out about bio-based. So very excited about that development. Strategic relations, just quickly, this is when I had the opportunity to testify at the U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee with Senator Stabenow and from Ohio, Senator Sherrod Brown. Was very pleased that the Farm Bill was able to accomplish some of the things that I had recommended, and an important part of that was that the biorefinery program be opened up to something more than just transportation fuels. And so very excited about that progress, and glad that the USDA Biopreferred Procurement Program also now has some funding to be able to drive that. And we also now have a strategic relationship with Wintech. It's a group of cluster organizations in Europe. What's amazing to me is the commitment the Europeans have made to bio-based products. Over the next 7 years, the European Commission and their industrial partners have committed 4 billion euros to drive commercialization activities on bio-based products in Europe. And these are some of the collaborators that we're working with in that regard. So I think I've made it through, Carolyn. And I'll end with this reminder of our conference coming up in October. Would hope that many of you that's on this call or in this webinar might choose to join us. Our registration for this goes live on April 1st, and hope that we'll see many of you there. So there's my contact information. And Carolyn, I'm ready to take some questions if you're ready to ask them.
I think you just cut out. Terrific, good timing, because you're a little spotty there at the end. Please, I encourage everyone to put your questions directly into the chat box. And I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity to bring my polls back in to learn a little bit more about who we have in our audience. I don't see any questions yet. Let's see. Anyone? Does anyone have any questions for Denny? Okay, we've got people typing in. Denny, do you want to read that, or did you want me to read it out for you?
I can take care
Where
of that.
state policies
Okay, so where state
laws.
policies or
Sure,
laws,
sure, go ahead.
where state policies or laws enacted to help the industry move forward. Ohio has a bio-preferred preference, but to be honest, that has not been very effective. There are only 2 contracts to date. One is with a hand sanitizer, and another is with some soy-based toner for refillment of printer cartridges. I think the soy toner contract is in the neighborhood of around $400,000, and the hand sanitizer may be like $10,000 for a state spend. The bigger thing has just been the states, what we call the Ohio Third Frontier. It's kind of our technology investment economic development program, has been a very strong supporter of bio-based products and has been very important in helping to develop those kinds of clusters that you saw, and why I referenced sort of like the importance of like public participation in there. Edwin Tam asked what are the membership fees? For commercial size enterprises, it's $5,000 per year. For small startups or pre-commercial companies, we only charge $1,000, but that involves them in our network. How did you develop your alliances? Example with the Soybean Council. If we look back, predominantly that was through someone having a novel technology, and we did enough analysis of that technology to be able to see that there was a market fit and that there were various bio-based feedstocks or suppliers that could help us with that. So clearly the Soybean Council has been one very important collaborator in that regard, but it can't just stop with the feedstock. You've also got to be able to identify these technologies and build from that. Let's see, Keith, I want to say great presentation. Oh, okay, good, thank you. Who owns the IP? OBIC does not assume any intellectual property position in what we do. The intellectual property, for the most part, is owned by, well, the owner of that would be whoever has it, whoever has created it, and we only try to help them to derive more value from their intellectual property. Mark, good to see you. Industry group could be valued to some organizations outside of Ohio. Is it limited to Ohio-based organizations? No. So in November of 2012, we launched what we call OBIC 2.0, and that is now this national organization. And so we have now, I think, 7 companies that are members from California. I know one from Washington State. We have 1 member from France. PepsiCo is based in Plano, Texas. Nike is based in Oregon. And so we're very national now in terms of our scope, and would be very interested in working with other extension and research groups or economic development organizations in trying to develop this kind of industry in your communities. I understand that some states like Minnesota have a producer tax credit for renewable chemicals. Was not aware of that. That's good to know. Thanks for sharing, Hans. Did the 2014 Farm Bill retain the per gallon tax credit for fuels or chemicals? I'm not sure about the biofuels component. I'm not aware of a tax credit ever for chemicals. There has been some lobbying efforts to try to accomplish that, but I'm not aware that that's been facilitated or accomplished. Right now, probably the bigger thing is the access to the biorefinery types of programs where you can get low interest loans on capital. So, Tammy, did you have technical glitches? Okay, can you briefly summarize your exciting advances in that area? Okay, so we have a $400 million what I call biorefinery coming online here over the next 2 years that uses municipal solid waste as the feedstock. And it is really exciting because when this thing comes online, I claim that Central Ohio will be the most sustainable community in North America. And here's why. That food waste or that biomass waste streams will be power going into an anaerobic digester that will be producing enough power, electricity, for 12,000 homes. In addition, the CO2 and the waste steam will be utilized by industrial greenhouses to power 35 acres of greenhouse technology. About 25 acres of that will be towards aquaculture, and an additional 15 acre or 10 acres of like hydroponic tomatoes and materials like that. So in addition, we will be extracting all kinds of plant nutrients that would have been previously dedicated to the landfill. And so it's really an exciting time. And we think that that has just tremendous promise for landfill operators and communities all across the country. And as important as it is when we work with, as important it is for Central Ohio, I think of other parts of the world that do not even have the infrastructure to manage waste in any sort of sanitary way. And so places like that in the world, I think it'll be even greater. So if we work with MSU, do we still go through OBIC? You can, you don't have to. I mean, I'm wondering, Edwin, if you're working with MBI up there on doing some scale up. We're big fans of the folks at MBI, and I think they do terrific work. We'd love to have you as active in our OBIC network as well. Jeff Barr, how many total members do you have? So at the present, we have 45 companies that are now members of our bioproduct network and are visiting with others all the time. So for your information, a Minnesota bill has been introduced in the legislature for bio-based products producer incentive. Don't know if it become a law this year or not. There are other states that are likewise doing these kinds of maybe in some situations mandates. I'm aware of a project in California looking at bio-based engine oil, which seems very exciting and a great opportunity. So, and I know that in many situations, places like national park systems or state parks are looking at various bio-based lubricants. We have, I mean, there's just a whole bunch of different types of materials that are out there. Everything from carpets to countertops to paints and coatings, etc. I'm not going to try and say them all again. So, Carolyn, I've raced through that list. If there's any more, I'm glad to keep going. There we go.
Really impressive, Danny. We've got another question.
Yeah, is the digester capable of biodegrading PLA, which is considered industrially compostable? That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. We actually were talking with the folks at NatureWorks just recently about that question, and so I don't know. What I would say is that probably in most situations, it could degrade minorly, at a small level in a anaerobic digester. But if you bring it out, and kind of post the anaerobic digester and you compost it, at that point, it certainly would, further degrade. So. We've got a few more typing. One of the things that I think is important is that as excited as we are right now about the state of the bioproduct industry here in the U.S., we also know that it's just a matter of time, right? That this has that this becomes inevitable. Both the advancements that are occurring with biotechnology and at some point the limits in terms of what we're going to be able to continue to just pull out of the planet, out of the earth. At some point, these kinds of bio-based resources will, if they're not already economically advantageous, they certainly will be in time. And many of the larger companies that we work with are just charting these kinds of cost curves with the idea that in time they want to be sure that they're ready for when that bio-based, if it's not, again, if it's not already economically advantageous, it will be, and they want to be ready for that. Do we have a relationship with NatureWorks? At the present, NatureWorks has not joined the network, but I would have to say that we do have a relationship with them. Our assistant director was just down at the Innovation Takes Root conference in Orlando, Florida, here just a couple weeks ago. And we had a visit with the folks at NatureWorks not too long ago. Can you help locate consultants to do due diligence? Absolutely. One of the things that we're very fortunate to have here in Ohio is, a long-standing polymer industry that many people have retired from. They have had very productive careers, and these retired individuals are still want to be active in the industry. And so there's lots of ways in which we can either tap existing consultants, or we have networks in place where we can go out and recruit others. So whether it's a bio-based question, or whether it's a polymer or a specialty chemical and its feasibility, or different levels of due diligence with regard to anaerobic digestion, et cetera, we've had we can play roles in those kinds of things. So Carolyn, I don't think you thought I could get through that presentation in the time we've got, and we've got some, we still have some space here. So.
Well done, Denny. We've still got some more questions coming. Let's just wait a couple of minutes here.
So I mentioned that Joanne is actually a member. Joanne's actually a member of our Bioproduct Network, and she does some policy support for us with Advanced Biofuels USA, based in Maryland, and has a pretty impressive network of and following of companies that work with her in that group. And we have also Barbara Vieira, who is our assistant director, is on that board. You're welcome. She just got in her plug for Advanced Biofuels USA. So she has a conference here in summer, Biomass 2014 in DC, July 29th and 30th. There you go. What is the relationship between OBIC and SIFT and other centers in OARDC? So OBIC is a program at Ohio State University. The director of OARDC is one of my two bosses. Both the director of OARDC and the director of Extension are the two people that I report to here in the College of Food, Ag, and Environmental Sciences at OSU. SIFT is what has been referred to as an Edison Center. It's a Center for Innovative Food Technology, and have worked with them in the past and continue to be involved and supportive of many of the important things that they do. Other centers like Polymer Ohio is, and it's actually, it's like Manufacturing Ohio now, or it's got a little bit different name, but we've had a long-standing relationship with them. Battelle Memorial Institute is a very important leader in the commercialization of new bio-based materials. Other centers in Ohio, Jobs 2020, Columbus, or Jobs Ohio and Columbus 2020 are two very large economic development programs. I'd like to learn more about other centers in other states and how OBIC might be able to assist and work with other communities to kind of implement some of these types of processes that we've developed here in Ohio, but reaching out to and being more inclusive of other types of feedstocks and other drivers. Is this presentation on your website? Do you want to talk to that, Carolyn? Are you going to have this presentation available?
Sure. Absolutely. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks for it was a fascinating presentation and a very engaged audience, so it's been really exciting last hour. And as well, thanks to the audience members for participating. And I'm going to, the recorded webinar will be available on the NCRCRD website, and I'm going to put that link right in here. Okay, so it'll take us a day or so, but the recorded webinar with the presentation will be available on that website. If anyone has any more questions, I encourage you, now's the time. If you have any more questions for Dennis, please speak up. Otherwise, I think we'll bring it to a nice close here.